Welcome to the Happy Homebirth Podcast, your source for positive natural childbirth stories and your community of support, education, and encouragement in all things homebirth and motherhood. Have you ever reached the point in labor, or honestly in life, where you truly didn't think you could keep going? Hey there, Happy Homebirthers, and welcome to episode 328 of the Happy Homebirth Podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Fusco, and today I'm speaking with Faith Robinson, a stay at home mom from Kansas City, wife to her husband of 3 years, and mother to baby Ezekiel. Faith grew up around birth through her mother's work as a doula, but despite always wanting an unmedicated birth, she initially viewed birth primarily as a medical event. That slowly began to change after witnessing a peaceful birth as a teenager, and it eventually led her and her husband to prayerfully pursue home birth for their own family. In this episode, Faith shares her pregnancy journey, navigating back pain from previous spinal injuries, concerns about preeclampsia symptoms late in pregnancy, and the emotional challenge of going well past her due date. And then came the long labor. You're going to love hearing her perseverance. Let's jump in. Please remember that the opinions of my guests may not necessarily reflect my own and vice versa. And this show is not medical advice, it's an educational tool. So continue to take empowered responsibility for your health and your family. Faith, thank you so much for coming on the Happy Home Birth podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. Would you mind taking just a moment to introduce yourself and your family to the listeners?
Yeah, so I am 24 years old. My husband and I live in Kansas City. Actually, next week we will be celebrating our 3rd anniversary, and we have a 4-month-old little guy, Ezekiel. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Beautiful. Now, I got to meet your mom not too long ago at the CFT conference. Kim, she is such a delight. So, when she mentioned you and then you reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to Faith because her mom is precious. So, I am convinced that you are precious as well. So, I'm super duper excited to hear your story. It's going to be just such a blast.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, my mom is very special.
Okay, so why don't you take us to the beginning of this? So, when you and your husband started thinking about planning a family or growing your family, where were you mentally? What were you planning?
Yeah, so because you mentioned my mom, she's like the very first starting point actually of all of this. So she is a doula and has been for, I think, like over 10 years. And so I always knew that I wanted an unmedicated birth, but I actually didn't know why. And I was never like afraid of birth, but I definitely viewed it as a medical event. And actually, when I was in high school, one of my mom's doula clients invited me to come to her birth. And so I went to her birth, and it was a hospital birth, and it was this woman's like 4th baby. And I remember like my mom like came in my room like 2 a.m. like, okay, she's in labor, like it's time for us to go. And I was like, what in the world? Okay. And I went to the birth. It was like a very quick labor, but it was so peaceful. And I was like, what in the world? Like, this is not what I thought childbirth was like. This is so different from the movies of like screaming and chaos. And like, it was not like that at all. And that was like really imprinted on me. And I don't think I realized at the time, but now looking back, I'm like, that was definitely in my mind of like, birth can be peaceful, birth can be quote unquote enjoyable. And so, yeah. Then when we decided that we wanted to start a family, I had heard of home birth, but I honestly thought those women were crazy. I was like, what in the world? That is wacky. Like, no, thank you. And so I had decided that I wanted to give birth at a birth center, and there was one pretty close to where we lived, but the year before I got pregnant, it actually shut down, and they couldn't get state funding anymore, all of the things. And that was like the only one in Kansas City, and we're not a small city, like at all. So I was like, okay, this is like weird. There was one that was starting up, but it was like almost an hour away from where we lived, and they hadn't even like officially opened. And so I was like, I don't know.
But okay, yes. So you have this experience as a high school student where you're like,
Hmm.
oh, what? Like, I just didn't realize that birth could be that.
Yeah.
And then you continue on, and then you meet your husband. And then where were you at that point? What was the pregnancy journey like? Like, what was becoming pregnant like in that part?
Yeah. When we decided that we wanted to start trying, it took us 3 months. And I don't know why, like, the first month, like, getting a negative test was so discouraging because, like, I knew that that didn't mean anything was wrong. It just, it can take a little bit. But, anyways, 3 months, we were actually in Utah for my cousin's wedding. And when we were there, I was like so tired. And we had gone on like lots of hikes, and I was like, maybe it's just that. But then I was actually unloading the dishwasher with my dad, and I like unloaded this specific mug that had something on it, and I started like dry heaving. And I was like, what is going on? And my grandpa actually made a joke. He's like, you're pregnant. And like no one knew that we were trying except for my mom. And I was like, okay. Got back from Utah. The next day I took a test and it was positive, and I was like, okay, here we
Grandpa was
go.
right.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that was like our conceiving journey. Nothing
Oh,
out of the ordinary, but yeah.
that's so sweet.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so at that point, you have it in your mind that you're going to, well, actually, I guess at that point, you didn't know about the birth center because it had already closed. So, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna do like a hospital birth with midwives. So I had reached out to a midwife group here that works at a hospital, had my first like appointment scheduled, and I was talking to my husband, and he does not like hospitals, like nothing about them. And it was actually his idea. He was like, what about a home birth? And I was like, what? I don't know about that. And he just like very gently was like, I think we should pray about it.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay,
Love that.
I'll pray about it. Sure. So we did. And I talked to my mom, obviously, because she's a doula. She had been at home births, hospital births, birthing center, like all of them. And I just like kind of ran it by her. But I didn't know anyone personally that had done one. So I didn't have anyone to like go and ask questions to. And I was like, I don't know. But after praying about it, I was like, I'm just going to like research some in the area and talk to them because that can't hurt. And so the first one that I reached out to, mind you, I was only like 4.5 weeks pregnant, and they were already full for
Oof.
my due date month. And I was like, oh
Whoa.
dear. Okay. So I was like, well, I don't know. Like, it kind of made me nervous. I was like, are they all going to be like this? Like, I don't know. So, anyways, found another one. I immediately was like, just in emailing with them, I was like, they were no pressure at all. She was like, just come in. It's not a commitment to anything. I would just like to get to know you, whatever. And I was like, okay. I ended up having to go by myself because my husband was working. I went, I talked to her, and I only got to meet one of the midwives. There's the practice that I went with has three, but I left and I like immediately called my husband and I was like, this is it. We're going with them. And I felt so much peace. I don't know. I just immediately knew like that was the Lord's answer to our prayer. Like it was the confirmation that I needed to be like, this is safe, this is okay. And she answered all of my questions. I did go in with like quite a few questions, and she answered all of them to what I felt was like where I felt confident in them.
Wow. Oh, how beautiful. What a neat experience. And even though you didn't know going into it that that's what you were going to do, it's so cool that it was like such a quick switch. It was like, oh,
Yes.
yep, this is it. And I
Yep.
feel so confident in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, what was your pregnancy like?
Yeah. So my first trimester was, I feel like, pretty much the norm. Fatigued. I had morning sickness. Nothing out of the norm. But something else that, like, I feel like the Lord confirmed for me so many times throughout my pregnancy that home birth was the right decision for us. And the first one started like very early on. So our midwifery practice normally doesn't do your first appointment until 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. But we were actually going to South Africa in my first trimester. And I was like, I would really just like to come in and just have an ultrasound just for peace of mind going that far away for 2 weeks. Like, I don't know. And they were like, of course, come in. Like, it's totally fine. Didn't even like bat an eye. And I was like, okay, confirmation number one. Like, you know, if you were at OB, like that wouldn't happen. Right. And so that was the first one for me. But anyways, the rest of my first trimester was like nothing crazy. My morning sickness stopped at 14 weeks, and immediately I was like a new woman.
Yes.
Appetite picked up. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love being pregnant.
Yep.
And towards the end of my second trimester, we took a birth class, which was really helpful, especially for my husband to know like what to expect and how he could support me. And my appointments, as they are, I feel like, with home birth midwives, were just like as long as I wanted them to be. I mean, it could have been 25 minutes, it could have been an hour, like whatever I wanted and needed, they were willing to meet me with that and able to ask questions. And I felt like genuinely listened to and very deeply cared for. And I appreciated that I was given like so many natural supplements for symptoms. I dealt with like a lot of anxiety in my first and second trimester, and it wasn't like, one, I wasn't just like brushed off, but two, I wasn't just given like this medication. It was like, okay, here are the supplements that we can take and how can we support what your body is naturally lacking in a natural way. Ugh. And so those things I just like very much appreciated. My third trimester, so back in high school, I actually broke my back in 2 spots and had 2 spine surgeries. And so going into pregnancy, I was a little bit nervous how that would come up. And the day I hit 30 weeks, it came up.
No way.
It was like walking hurt so bad. And at the time I was nannying and I had a full panic attack like in our house before I left. And I was like, I cannot do this. I don't know, like, and then I was freaking out because I was like, you're not supposed to be having panic attacks when you're pregnant. Like, what's that? You know, all of the things. But anyway, so I was like, I've got to figure out something that can like get this under control because I still have, you know, at minimum like 10 weeks left. So I ended up finding a prenatal chiropractor that was great. I went to them weekly and it really, really helped. Wow. And I think like that investment was 110% worth it. Mm-hmm. And then also prenatal massages also helped me a ton.
So do you think that physical, it was like the physical started really increasing the mental emotional? Is that kind of what happened? Like you had this physical discomfort and that started really impacting the mental emotional aspect?
Yes, I would say yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then at exactly 35 weeks, I was in the shower and I was like, oh my gosh, my ankles are like really swollen. Weird. And we went to church that morning and I was standing in church and all of a sudden like so dizzy. My eyes went completely black and I was like, oh dear. Like I have a smartwatch and I looked at my resting heart rate and it was 132. And I was like, okay, something's like a little bit not quite right. Mm-hmm. I kind of brushed it off. Probably shouldn't have. Definitely shouldn't have. But the next morning, I took my blood pressure at my nanny family's house that I was working for, and it was 144/94. And I was like, okay. So I like called my midwife, and she was like, you need to go to the ER right now. Wow. And I was like, okay. And that was again just like a physical affecting the emotional. Like I was immediately in tears. I was like, what is going on? Like, this is not what I thought was like. And she even told me on the phone, she was like, I just want you to know, like, rest assured, if you have to deliver the baby. And I was like, what?
Wait, what? Yeah.
Like, whoa. And anyways, I went to the ER And I got there and like immediately like hooked up to like 4 different monitors, and I was like, oh my gosh. And like my anxiety spiked through the roof. And I was like, this is like, just hospitals in general like make me
Mm-hmm.
so anxious. And everyone, you know, all the nurses are just like, we have to put this on, we have to put this on, have you been feeling the baby move? Like, I'm like, yes, he's been moving as normal, like what? But they monitored me for 3 hours, ran several tests, and they ended up sending me home. And I was like, okay, that's great that I'm home. Now what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my midwives, I like sent them all of the reports from the hospital, and she was like, this is great, except they ran every test except for preeclampsia. And I was like, are you kidding?
Like
Like,
what? Why? What?
yeah. So she's like, so actually come into the office. I'll take a urine sample for you and I'll overnight it, whatever. And I was like, I was so frustrated. I was like,
Mhm.
why in the world did I just go to the hospital for 3 hours with all the preeclampsia symptoms and not be tested for that? Like, what?
Wild.
Yeah. So I did end up doing it with them. It came back negative, but that mixed with the back pain that I was having at 35 weeks, I ended up just stopping my nanny job,
Mm-hmm.
and I just be able to keep things under control at
Mm-hmm.
least until like 37 weeks where I can deliver at
Mm-hmm.
home. That was that. Definitely ended up making it past 37 weeks, as you'll hear. But yeah.
No worries there. We made
Yeah.
it.
Yes. So that was my time leading up to my due date.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That is tough. Did you make any changes? So once you had the swelling and that dizzy situation, did you do anything in particular? Like, did your midwives recommend anything to you, or did you change anything? Or was it just kind of like the lack of stress of going to your nanny job and all of that kind of resolved it?
Yeah, I think it was the lack of stress, and then
Mhm.
just also ensuring that I was like, I mean, it's so basic, but like staying hydrated,
Yes.
lots of
Mm-hmm.
electrolytes. So I was having like electrolyte packets like multiple times a
Mm-hmm.
day after that,
Mm-hmm.
and um lots of protein, like ensuring that
Right.
I was hitting at least 100 grams of protein every day. So
Right. Okay,
yeah.
cool. That totally makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so you get to 37 weeks. You get to more than 37 weeks. What was the end of the pregnancy like?
Yeah, so I was due on my due date was December 14th. My whole pregnancy, like literally since I found out I was pregnant, I was like, Lord, please don't let me have a Christmas baby.
Mm.
Like, I just, and I know that sounds silly, but I just did not want a Christmas baby.
Mhm.
Very, like, plain and simple. I just didn't want one. And when I would tell people that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just like, I hope he's not a Christmas baby. Everyone laughed at me, like literally everyone, and was like, there's no way like they'll let you go that long. And yeah, exactly. And I was like, just kind of shook my head, you know, like, what do you say? You know, whatever. So yeah, at 37 and 5, I lost some of my mucus plug, and I was like, okay, like, interesting, okay. And I had been having like lots of backaches, different than the back pain I had been having. It was way more, it was aches,
Mhm.
um, and lots of cramping in my stomach. And I was like, interesting, okay. But then like nothing happened. So then I get to 38 and 3, and that day I started having contractions, and they were every 10 minutes, like on the dot, lasting a minute for 3 hours. All like, it was in the night, like 3 hours. It went for 3 hours in the night. And then they like completely fizzled out when the morning came. And I was like, okay. And I would just do that like on and off, like random days for like 3 to 5 hours. I'd have contractions every 10 minutes. My 39-week appointment came around and I lost more mucus plug. And I was like, okay, it's been almost like 2 weeks since I lost it the first time. But there was something very specific back from our birth class that I remembered. And they had specifically said you can lose and regrow your mucus plug like countless times. And I had never heard that before. And so I was like really glad that they told me that, because it didn't allow me to be like, I lost my mucus plug, labor's happening in 24 hours. Like,
Right.
I mentally knew that didn't really indicate anything.
Mhm.
And so my due date came and went, and I had mentally prepared myself knowing that first time moms naturally go late. I had really mentally prepared myself to go to like 41 weeks. And at 40 and 4, I was definitely big, definitely uncomfortable, and I was just like mentally, I didn't feel like I was in the best place. And I was like, I've got to get out of the house. Like, I've got to go do something. And my husband and I ended up going to the zoo and just like walking the zoo. And we just walked around, got out of the house. We actually had our 40-week appointment the next day. And I was like, I'm going to be so glad to tell them, like, I walked miles. But I don't know. That's just like a funny random thing in there because it's like middle of December at this point. We're like walking the zoo bundled up.
You're probably the only people there.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And so for my 40-week appointment, I was 40 and 5, and the midwife ended up coming to our house that day for the appointment, and she was like, okay, I just want you to know, like, I'm not worried about anything at all, but baby has not dropped at all.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. And I was pretty bummed just because I was like, I don't know, just not like, wasn't encouraging news.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm glad that she like was honest about it. I would much rather have had that than like, oh yeah, like, you know, false hope. So she did just like some exercises on me, palpating of my belly, trying to get him down. And she kind of asked me like, okay, what do you want to do moving forward? Like, do you want to keep letting things ride out naturally? Like, what do you want? And I was like, yeah, at this point, 40 and a half weeks, I'm fine to just like keep letting it go. And she was like, great, we'll see you next week then for your 41-week appointment. And so 41 weeks came, I lost more mucus plug, and at 41 and 1, my husband and some of our friends ended up going to get tattoos. And I went with them, and I was like sitting there and I was like, how am I still pregnant? And how are we here? Like, what is going on? And this was December 22nd. So I was also like getting anxious that Christmas was rapidly approaching, and I was still very pregnant. And so the next day we had our 41-week appointment, and they asked me the same thing, like, where are you at mentally? What are you wanting to do? And I was like, I'm ready to meet my child. Like, I remember thinking, like, if I get a membrane sweep, odds are that I will probably start to go into labor or have him on Christmas. Because typically it's like 48 hours.
That's good math. That's very good math.
Yeah. And so, but I had gotten to the point where I was like, I don't even care. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm uncomfortable and I'm ready to meet my son. And so I was like, I think I would like to do a membrane sweep. And she was like, do you want to do it today? And I was like, today? Like, I didn't realize that it was like the same day. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so we did it. And she told me that I was 2 centimeters before the sweep. And I was like, okay, at least all of these Braxton Hicks that I had been having for weeks now were not for nothing. Like, my body was preparing and preparing well. And so she did this sweep. I had bloody show that day, but nothing crazy. And I did not have like any cramping, anything. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, this is in the Lord's hands. I'm not doing anything else. Like, personally, I just did not want to do castor oil, all of that. Like, and so Christmas Eve came, and they did order a BPP just to ensure like everything was safe. I had that on Christmas Eve morning. He passed perfectly with perfect numbers. I was like, great. See you when you're ready, buddy. Like, so went through Christmas Eve. Christmas Day came. I was with my dad's whole side of the family, and they all were just like so surprised that I was still pregnant. They were like, so, like, what's the plan? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm just writing it out. Like, he's safe. I'm safe. Everything is fine. And I remember like some of my family members, and I know that this was all like meant out of well intention, but they were like, what if he's too big? You know, the classic, like, your baby's too big. And I just remember saying, like, I don't believe that my body will grow a baby that's too big for me. Like, I just believe that. And they were like, okay.
Okay, crazy.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah. So then Christmas, went to bed that night, and I woke up at 1:50 a.m. So technically this was December 26th.
Nice.
And
You made it.
yes, I woke up to contractions, and they were 10 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute, like from the get-go. And it lasted all night long. And I like tried to sleep, but they were already kind of strong enough that I was not able to sleep through them. And I did not wake my husband because I had this feeling in my heart that this was like the real thing. It just felt different to me than previously. And I was like, I'm not going to wake him. He needs to sleep if this is the real thing. He woke up the next morning at 7 and he like rolled over, and I remember I was like laying there awake and I was like, I think today's the day.
Hi.
And yeah. And he was like, what? And I was like, I've been having contractions. And he was like, okay. So I texted the midwives that morning and just kind of like told them what was going on. And by the time I texted them, which was at 8 a.m., they had progressed to being 6 minutes apart. And so I was like, okay, like progression is happening. So this is good news. And they just encouraged me, like, you know, eat breakfast, make sure something's in your body, drink electrolytes, and just keep doing what you're doing, move around, like all of the things. Yeah, by 12 p.m., my contractions were averaging like 5 minutes apart. And I just, you know, kept kind of riding them out. And I did forget to mention this, but my mom, I ended up hiring as my doula because my practice does require first-time moms to have a doula. So I had her as my doula. So this whole time, like, I had been in communication with her as well. And I asked her to join us at 2 p.m. that day. So it had been like 12 hours of labor. And she came, and at that point, they were like 3 to 4 minutes apart.
Wow.
And I called the midwives 2 hours later. So they came at 4 p.m. and they just kind of like sat there, observed, you know, nothing crazy, you know, checked baby's heart rate, my blood pressure, all of the things. And they were there for about like an hour and a half. And the midwife had asked, would you mind if we did a cervical check just to see where you're at? And I was like, I mean, I had gone into labor like adamant that I did not want any cervical checks. And I was like, I mean, like, sure. if you think that I should. And she's like, well, I just want to see for you to know where you're at. And I was like, okay. So she did. She checked me and she was like, so you're actually still only a 2. And which is what I was when I had the membrane sweep. Yeah. And I was like, oh boy. Okay. And so mentally it was like I was not in a good place.
No.
Because that was 16 hours of labor and I was 3 to 4 minutes apart, lasting a minute, and I hadn't made any progression. And I was like, oh dear. So they were very sweet, but she was like, she's like, we are happy to stay here, but I don't want you to feel like you're just being watched. Would you be okay if we went home and you can call us back like whenever you need us again? And I was like, yes, I think that makes sense. Like, that sounds like a plan. And so midwives packed up all of their stuff and my mom, and everyone left. And they encouraged me to just take an Epsom salt bath, Benadryl, try and get some sleep. Their goal was for me to like sleep through the night pretty much.
Yeah.
And they left, and I just remember like I was sitting in our dining room and I just like started crying to my husband. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I'm on hour 16 and I like am not making any progress. Yeah. And my husband was like really, really sweet, really supportive, and he was just like, I know that you can do this. And he was like, let's get in the bath. And he just like didn't even entertain it. And I was like, okay. Like, You're right. Like, it didn't even give me time to, like, respond, which was good.
Yes. Yeah. Like, nope, 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 nope.
Yep. So I did get in the bath, tried to relax, and I would doze off in the bath, but my contractions were 3 minutes apart. And I was having to, like, sit up and hold on to him through the contraction. So
Mm-hmm.
I, like, sleeping was not happening. Great in theory, it was not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I labored all night. I called the midwives at 3:15. So at this point, I had been in labor for 25 hours. And I called them and I was like, I'm ready for you to come back. I was ready to get in the birth pool.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of advised, like, not to get in the pool until they were there. And so I was like, I'm ready to get in the pool. So could you please come back? And I had forgotten to mention that I had thrown up, like, everything that I had put down. Like, I had nothing in my body. And they came a little bit after 4. When they came, they gave me Zofran for my nausea because I was, like, severely nauseous.
Mm-hmm.
And they had contemplated, well, they had offered me an IV for fluids.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we're happy to do it, but you will have to get out of the birth pool. And I was like, nope, I'm staying in here. That's fine. Like, I'll just sip and hope that I can keep this down now with, like, the Zofran. And that ended up working. Didn't have to do the IV. But they came. I was just going through labor still. Contractions were still 3 minutes apart. And I was laboring on my hands and knees in the tub. I was reclining in the tub. I was squatting in the tub, doing one-legged lunges in the tub, like, all of the positions. And after I had been in there for like 3 hours, they recommended me going to the toilet and trying to labor there. And I was like, sure, like, I don't know, like, whatever. Yeah. And at this point, I had totally entered labor land, and I do not remember a lot of it. And like I said, I had asked my midwives for my labor notes, which was so cool to, like, look back and see and, like, remember things and know now, like, what actually happened. So yeah, I had gone to the toilet and I started feeling, like, a lot of pressure in my butt. And I knew in my head that that was, like, a good sign. Yeah, so I had, like, told them that, but I had also told them, like, I am very discouraged and worried about how much longer this is going to take. And I remember asking my midwife, it was like, this was like 6 a.m. now on the 27th. And I had asked her, like, do you think I'll have a baby by dinner time? And she was like, Faith, I can't say, but I just want you to take, like, one contraction at a time. Like, only focus on the one that you're on. And I was like, okay, like, I can do that. And she did offer me, though, she was like, would you like a cervical check to see where you're at? And I, like, really went through this back and forth of, like, I don't know, because last time it was so discouraging. But at the same time, like, it could be encouraging for me in this moment. And I thought about it for like 30 minutes and I was like really going back and forth, and I was like, okay, yeah, like, I think I do want one. And she checked me and I was a 7. And for me, that was encouraging. I was like, okay, I'm making progress. And she also told me, like, you're making really great progress. A lot of change is happening. This is good. And so she did tell me, though, like, I just want you. Actually, I'm not even sure if she told me. She probably didn't tell me this, but I did see it in the notes that baby was still not engaged in my pelvis.
Okay.
So she then encouraged me to do, like, lift and tuck contractions. And so, like, my husband was behind me, lifting my belly and, like, tucking my pelvis to try and get baby to engage down in there. And it was so painful, so painful. And I was like, oh my, like, but it created bloody show, like, right away. And for me, I was like, okay, that's encouraging. Like, it's doing something. And I got back in the pool, and the midwife then did lift and tucks with me. And so she, like, held my belly up and I did them. And yeah, so those, although they were, like, horribly painful, they helped my body progress pretty quickly. And then similarly, they had me do, when I was out of the pool, I can't tell you how many times I was in and out of that pool. I was like in for 2 hours, out for an hour, like back and forth. But when I was out of the pool, they had me do side lying with my leg up on a bunch of pillows. And that was another one that was like helped me progress. And they saw a change when I did that. And I remember I was on the toilet at one point and the midwife came in and she was like, I think that you should really side lie for 10 contractions. And I was like, I'll think about it.
I'll consider it.
Yeah. And she was like, okay, just think about it. And she like left and it was just my husband and I in the bathroom. And I was like, I can't do that. Like they hurt way too bad. And I also remember telling him, like, I actually don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's not that I can't, I don't want to. And he was like, Faith, like, remember why you're doing this. You're doing this for our baby, and you can do it. And, like, and again, like, that was it, and he didn't entertain it. And I was like, okay. But he did encourage me. He was like, I really think that you should do the side lying because we've seen progress with that. And I was like, okay. So I'm like hobbling back over to my bed and I was like, I'll do the side lying. And she was like, okay, I'm so proud of you. Like that's great. Hopped up there, did them, and immediately, like the pain from the contractions, I have heard women talk about like a pain-free birth, and that was far from my case. I felt every single thing. And yeah, like even in the tub, although the tub, I was very much able to relax in between contractions, I felt every single thing during the contractions. And I'm doing the side lying, and like once again, I so vividly remember like my eyes were closed, midwife and student midwife were in there with me, and I was like grabbing a blanket and I was like, I'm ready to throw in the towel. Like that's exactly what I said. And one of the midwives just told me, like, she put her hand on my leg and she was like, God has created your body to do this. You are safe. Your baby is safe. And you will make it through. And I was like, ugh. And then, like, the next contraction hit. Like, okay. But again, like, looking back, like, personally, that is what I needed. Like, no entertaining the thought of, like, not being able to do this. And right after that, as I'm sidelining, my water broke. And I was like, okay, like, progress was made again. And she ended up checking me again, and I was an 8. And I was like, okay, we're pretty good. This was hour 36 of labor. And so at this point, the student midwife left to go to another birth, and they brought in one of the other like main midwives. So I had 2 main midwives there, and I was laboring on my ball, and all of a sudden I like started pushing, and I was like, I am only an 8, so like I know that this isn't really like and so I like told them, and with every single one, like it became more and more irresistible. But they were telling me like really try and breathe through it instead of pushing, because it can like cause more damage if you're not fully dilated. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, but like my body is literally bearing down. Like and it was like almost more exhausting to not push than to push. And I was getting like mentally out of it. Like I was so discouraged, the lack of sleep, all of the things. And they encouraged me to just like reach up and see what I could feel. I was like, okay. So I like reached up and I like immediately could feel hair. And I was like, oh, okay. Like that's encouraging. And it was so sweet the way that like the Lord met me when I was at like my wit's end with these little bits of encouragement. And I just remember so many times like mentally like asking the Lord, like, I need your help right now. Please help me. And immediately he would meet me where I was at. with either encouragement or just like the mental fortitude to make it through the next contraction. In my head, though, because I felt hair, I was like, that means he's going to be here soon.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I don't, yeah. But they discussed again, like checking me to see if my cervix was completely gone before like really pushing with my contractions. And it's so funny because like I went in, like I said, like not wanting any cervical checks, but they were never, the midwives were never like, you need a cervical check. Like, we are checking you. It was always like,
Right.
would you like it? And it's just funny how like my mind needed certain things that I didn't think it was going to need beforehand. Yeah. And so, anyways, they ended up checking me and I was a 9. And she was like, baby is much lower, but you're still, I mean, you're still not fully dilated. So we would like you to try not to push still. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. I tried for like an hour and a half more of like not pushing. And I remember telling them, like, I cannot keep doing this. Like, I can't keep doing the not pushing.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, let me do like an actual vaginal exam to see what I can do to help you. And I was like, okay. She confirmed that I like definitely had a cervical lip and it just like most likely was not going to go away. And she held for a few contractions, she like held back my cervix while I was fully pushing to see how that would go. And I tried like side lying, hands and knees, like all of the things. And I was like, I want to get back in the tub. Like, just let me get back in the tub. And I also really, really, really wanted to have a water birth. And so I was like, if I'm like pushing now, I would like to be in the tub for when he comes. And they were like, okay, that's like totally fine. I got in the tub. I was in there for like another hour and they encouraged me again, like, reach in and see like what you feel. And I felt baby's head like one knuckle in. And I was like,
right.
Okay, like he's there, like we're close. And again, it was like that boost of encouragement, like right when I mentally needed it. And I was doing like all the positions in the tub, deep squat, pushing, hands and knees, all of the things. And they checked baby's heart rate and she was like, I would like you to come out and let's just try a different position. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, didn't think much of it at the time. And so I was, might I add, student midwife came back, finished the other birth and came back. And I was like, no way that she finished an entire birth and I'm still here. And so, yeah, it was just like kind of comical looking back now, but at the time I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. At the time, not very comical.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so I had one of the main midwives was actually asleep in our nursery. And then I had the other one and the student were in there and I was doing a deep squat. I was doing contractions in deep squat against our bed. And she listened to baby's heart rate and she immediately was like, go get Becca. And that's the other midwife. And I was like, okay, interesting. And like Becca comes in, she has been practicing just a little bit longer than the other one. And so that's why I also was like, okay, interesting. She like listens and she was like, Faith, like, your baby's okay, but I'm not loving what I'm hearing and it's time to get him out. And I was like, okay. And she's like, get up on the bed. Like, we're getting this baby out. And now looking back, they did not tell me this at the time, but I asked at my 6-week postpartum appointment, his heart rate was in the 70s. And so, like, if I was in the hospital, that was like emergency C-section, like right away. And she put me up on the bed. And this was also like, I was like, I do not want to birth laying on my back. Like, I don't want to. But in the moment, like, it's crazy what, like, your preferences go out the window a little bit when it's like, your baby needs to come and now. So because I had the cervical lip, the only way pretty much to get him out was for her to hold it back the whole time. And that was very painful.
Yeah.
And so I had one midwife doing that, and then my husband was holding one leg, and another midwife was holding the other one. Looking back, I was like, this is like not what I wanted this to be at all. But at the same time, had I been in a hospital, like I said, like it would have been a C-section, which is most certainly not what my hopes were for my birth. So looking back, I'm very thankful that like that still was able to happen, you know? I don't know. But anyways, I was doing coached pushing because I was like very like physically my body was like starting to tap out a little bit. My contractions were spacing out and some of them were only lasting like 10 seconds. And they were giving me like cotton root tincture and honey just to like boost my energy. And they were so encouraging with every push, like every time. Like they were almost like clapping and celebrating like they weren't, but it felt that way to me, which again, like mentally gave me like the fortitude to continue. And I, at like exactly hour 47, his head came out. And 1 minute later, next contraction, his body came out. And immediately, all of the midwives were like, that's why it was so hard. And I was like, what? He had a nuchal hand and had completely turned his head to like a 45-degree angle. And so I was like, okay. And they immediately like placed him on my chest, obviously. I had like 20 minutes before my placenta like naturally came. And I remember like more than him even coming out, the placenta being delivered, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so relieving. Like, holy cow. And they did tell me, she was like, I'm seeing a little more blood than I would like. Are you okay for shot of Pitocin? And I was like, yep, I don't care. Like, sure. And they gave me a shot of Pitocin. And when they went to like, you know, do my vaginal exam to like monitor or check everything, one midwife saw like what she thought might be a slight 2nd-degree tear. First midwife only saw 1st-degree, but they ended up stitching me as if it was a 2nd-degree tear. Yeah, I got the whole like placenta tour. My husband cut the cord once it was completely done pulsing. I breastfed like while they were stitching me, which was so cool. And when they took me to the bathroom to like go to the bathroom and, you know, get cleaned up, that's when my husband got skin to skin. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, I just birthed a child and I'm walking in my own house to the bathroom by myself, like holding someone, but like on my own power. And this is crazy. And then I like walked back in our bedroom. The bed was completely made with fresh sheets. And my husband was just there like holding our son. And they like sat me in bed and they were like, okay, we're going to do like the newborn exam. And I was like in this like what felt like another world. Like I just was like, how am I sitting in my bed with my baby in my bed doing a newborn exam? Like this is insane.
Wow.
And then they, yeah, like quite literally tucked us into bed, made sure that baby was like eating again, and they were like, okay, we'll see you in 24 hours. And I was like, what in the world? But yeah.
Wow. Faith, that is I mean, it probably felt even more surreal after not having slept in days and having been in just like intense labor for so long. That just like, oof, just the relief had to have been so incredible after that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
I mean, that is a true story of perseverance and, you know, just strength beyond what you even thought possible. First time births can be so intense simply because our bodies haven't done it before.
Right.
And to have a baby whose hand is up and head is tilted and all of these different things to work through,
Yeah.
which, yeah, once again, it's like, okay, well, that makes sense why he was up high and not,
Yep.
not dropping and not
Yep.
this and not that and the D
Mm-hmm.
cells. And it is so funny how it's like, yeah, the labor tells a story. And then sometimes you actually kind of get to see what it was as they emerge. Not always, but
Yeah.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Well, how did you feel after? Did you get a nice little rest after that?
I like don't even remember what happened that night. I'm not gonna lie. Like I just remember we like he slept in bed with us and
Mm-hmm.
then but I don't remember like that night at all. So
Mm-hmm.
either I was awake the whole night because of like being so excited and adrenaline or I was sacked out. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you.
Who's to say?
Yeah. But
Wow.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, Faith. What an incredible story.
Thank you.
Truly, just like I said, just that story of perseverance. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes birth is like that. And just when you get to the other end and you realize I did it. I
Mm-hmm.
made it through. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. How
Thank you.
incredible.
Thank you.
Faith, this has been such a joy and such an honor. Thank you so much for coming on the Happy Home Birth podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so thankful I got to share my story. Your podcast has been so beneficial to me and so encouraging to me throughout my pregnancy, and I'm still listening to them, obviously, because plan to have more kids. I'm like, what other stories can I hear? So, thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Wow, what a birth story. As we move into this week's episode roundup, there are a few things from Faith experience that really stuck with me. First, I keep thinking about the importance of support, not just during the birth itself, but throughout pregnancy too. Faith described so many moments where she felt deeply cared for by her midwives. They listened to her concerns, helped her navigate anxiety, supported her through physical discomfort, and treated her as a whole person rather than just managing symptoms. That kind of care changes the way women experience pregnancy and birth. Second, this story is such a reminder that labor does not always unfold quickly or neatly. 47 hours is a long time. And I appreciated Faith's honesty about how difficult that became mentally. The discouragement after learning she was still only 2 centimeters after hours of strong contractions. The exhaustion, the moments of saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I think many women need to hear stories like this because sometimes physiological birth is portrayed as effortless if you just trust enough or if you do the precise right things to prepare. But birth is intense. So trusting birth doesn't mean pretending it's always easy. Sometimes trusting birth looks like continuing one contraction at a time. And finally, I was so moved by the way Faith described the Lord meeting her during her labor. The difficulty was not removed, the pain was not instantly ended, but He gave her exactly what she needed for the next step: a moment of encouragement, a reminder that she was safe, the strength to continue. Truth be told, I think that mirrors motherhood so often too, at least for me. We're not always given the full picture ahead of time, but grace does meet us where we are. P.S. Shout out to Faith's mom, Kim. You're the best. Love you, girl. All right, my friends, that's all I've got for you for today. I'll see you back here next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Are you looking to extend the home birth support, encouragement, and education? Join us in our Facebook group, Happy Home Birth Podcast Community, and check us out on Instagram at Happy Home Birth Podcast.